Dr. Cheryl, and welcome to Wake Up with Dr. Cheryl. Tonight we have a very special guest, Duff Gardner, and tonight we have the wealth of online media. Duff is an author of an upcoming book called 8 Digital Dragons. Expand your business by slaying resistance. He's the founder of digital agency Offers That Sell, podcast production company off My Duff Media, and a stealth startup, teachx.com. Duff lives in wonderful, beautiful Canada in Victoria, BC. He is a graduate of Carnegie Mellon and Silicon Valley, and he has his MSc in Learning Sciences and Information Technology. And in his free time, he is a passionate advocate of animal rescue, and I know he has a wonderful dog named Seamus, and adoption and LGBTQ rights. Welcome, Duff. Thank you for coming. I would have loved if you were here in person, sitting right across from me, but hey, we do the best we can. Welcome.
Well, I'm really happy to be here, Dr. Cheryl. Thanks so much. It's good to see you.
Yes, we have been trying to do this for, let's see, I met you in February of this year in Florida. And we've continued our friendly relationship and friendship. And, I just would love to hear about more of the current and upgraded media world out there. And I know you're teaching, and I'm part of that teaching process that you're doing online. So please, and you are from Victoria originally.
Well, I grew up in Calgary, Alberta.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you know Calgary, it's like geographically like Denver and culturally like Dallas. So
yes.
Anyway.
They have the roundup there, don't they? The Calgary Stampede.
Yeah, I was going to bring my cowboy hat, but I can get it if you'd like.
No, that's okay. Not unless you really want to wear it.
Well, I don't know. But I live in Victoria, British Columbia, which for those of you who don't know, it's kind of geographically between Seattle and Vancouver. So the border dips down on the west coast, and so it's about halfway between the two.
And it's beautiful there. Gorgeous.
It's gorgeous. So today was about, in your guys' way of measuring it,
right,
it was the high, Fahrenheit, it was the high 70s, probably got just into the low 80s maybe.
Oh.
So it's a nice day today. Yeah, really beautiful day.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, so I'm happy to be here. I mean, I'm very familiar with your neck of the woods too. As you can see, I kind of took my schooling down there in the Silicon Valley. So I love it down there.
Yeah.
I miss it.
Yeah.
So next time I'll come and see you, and I'll come in studio.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
So where would you like to start with, I know we've had conversations about what is really happening with the media world with online businesses or online presence.
Right. Yeah, sure. So my thing is that in the next 10 years, over half of us will be in some kind of a self-employed, freelancing situation, whatever that might be, side hustle. And if you think about that, that is a completely new normal than we've grown up being used to. Like certainly, like I'm 54 now. So when I grew up, this idea that, like when my father went to university, there was a lineup of people to hire these graduates. So I'm Generation X. When I came out, it was the opposite. And so that idea, that meme of, a PhD graduate times 4 working at the convenience store was kind of born, that idea, because it was the reverse. And I think that we grew up being scrappy and, understanding that no job was forever. But this idea that we're stepping into now, which is that over half of us is predicted to be in some form of self-employment in the next 10 years, is really quite a different new normal that we really didn't prepare ourselves for.
What do you think has driven that?
I think it's a lot of things. I mean, there's the economics of it, that drives people to do a side hustle, whatever that might be. I think in the last economic downturn, there was a cycle of people who were layered out, who just never went back to full-time work.
Mm-hmm.
There's technology involved. So, a lot of people my age are not tech savvy and they're feeling that, whereas the younger generations are coming up and being quite nimble about their career choices.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of influences. More people are choosing to work less than full time. And I mean, there's the pace of life. I was reading some stuff yesterday about stress and the impact of stress in our body and how people are just choosing a different life. So I think there's a lot of reasons driving it.
Mm-hmm.
But again, like the thing that's kind of important to note here is that, it's a new normal. We really didn't grow up thinking necessarily, many of us, that we would be self-employed. And there's a whole new skill set that comes with being successful at doing that.
Yeah, especially the administration and the financial part of it. I grew up in an entrepreneurial family, so it's not old to me, but having gone back into the corporate world, I
Right.
totally get it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think a lot of your listeners are financially, definitely, they're in that conversation about money and the relationship to money and wealth. And this is part of it, like I think, again, whether it's a side hustle or, the attraction of a more free lifestyle or circumstance, culture, economics, technology, there's a lot of things driving it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess we could use this as a teaching tool because you have a lot of experience and knowledge around this. So, I'm just going to let you take off with, and I'll just ask questions in between.
Sure. Yeah. Well, yeah, thanks. So I definitely think that, that whole situation brings, it's created this wave of people who are attempting to get online in some way, shape, or form. So it doesn't really matter if you've got a locally based business or a business that's service-based that, transcends location. You're trying to sort, let's put it this way. It's not like, do you remember some people way back in the day? I don't remember, but I heard that some people thought the telephone was a fad. So it obviously was not a fad.
I can't imagine.
Right? Yeah. So it's kind of like that. Like being online is not a fad. It's a thing. It's part of the continuum of where things are going. So whether that's, wanting to do an online product launch, whether it's some online marketing, social media marketing, content marketing, email marketing, whatever the case may be, there are client attraction strategies online. There's some things that we have to do and learn to do online, and there's so many choices that it just becomes a little bit hairy. And there's the expression "chasing shiny squirrels" that I think a lot of people use in this context. It's a bit of a problem, I think, as everybody kind of tries to sort out what the most reasonable way to have a successful venture might be if they're going to go off and be self-employed, even if it's part-time.
Well, my understanding is there's, like for podcasting, because that's how we're connecting, is that there's like 700,000 podcasts. And I don't know the actual percentage, but maybe 80% of them are not really even making any money, or they're just doing it more for information purposes or teaching purposes.
Right.
Maybe my number isn't correct.
Well, I think that the podcasts are kind of du jour right now. Definitely, it can be like as a strategy to become a podcaster. It's potentially a great way to build your platform as a service provider. Like right now, we're on your platform. which is part of your platform, right? To get the word out in terms of your message and your mission. Podcasting for some is a really great way to do it. My business is stepping into podcasting because we like the opportunity in front of us. We think it's a great platform building tool. But it doesn't work for everybody. But there's a lot of things going on. There's a lot of people who are very good at video, Instagram, a lot of influencers on Instagram. But I think at the end of the day, like whatever strategy you pick, I think the thing that ends up happening is people either, because they're a little bit unsure of their footing, and they gravitate to where they gravitate to, and they might think that like they've got an idea. So I know people who spend a lot of time on building a product, very old school. Like I'm going to spend, like I know of a person who spent 2 years building an online course program, and that's not necessarily, it's not the norm, but it's not unheard of. And then I also know people who they might do something like, I'm going to do a 5-day challenge marketing thing. And if you ask them, well, what is your product, or what are you selling? How are you going to make money with that? They're like, oh, right. So I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
Just a manifestation of a new realm.
Yeah, it's unique, I think, on how to approach that.
Yeah, totally, absolutely.
And I'm still trying to figure that out myself, with your help.
Yeah. Well, I think the thing to do with that kind of thing is to pick one thing. And that's hard sometimes because you don't know what the best thing is, and I think that's the trap we fall into. So.
Well, I have learned through some older, gurus in the world out there, is, they keep saying, you find your purpose and your passion and you just stay with it.
Right.
And you can create money that way, a living that way.
Well, I think that if you find the intersection between your passion and opportunity and your skill set, that's ideally where the intersection of those three things, for sure. And that's not always the easiest thing. And that's basically one of the, when people step into working for themselves, that's one of the hardest things to sort out, which sounds kind of counterintuitive almost, but
right.
It's true.
So I know you're teaching this, right. And what is your purpose and passion for what you're doing?
Right. Thank you. Well, I think when I was younger, I really struggled with this idea of dismissal. I don't know what it was. It was just a bunch of different things that combined in it. And I found that as I get older and older, I really like to help people. I don't know why that is. I like to help people. It's just part of my thing.
What do you mean dismissal?
I don't know. Like I used to get really discouraged about people. And I think at a certain point I made a choice that wasn't going to rule my life, and instead that I was going to try to be valuable to people. And so,
okay.
Like I just, so I just have that kind of thing. But in the broader context, I think what I notice with people that we're talking about here is that there's actually a thing that I talk about when I speak, and I call it the rabbit hole of irresistibility. How's that for yeah, and so the thing is, there's this word in online marketing circles and coaching circles. Seamus just walked by, my Dougie, actually. It's called this word called irresistible offer, irresistible messaging. And so if you've taken any steps to, if you're a service-based entrepreneur and you've taken any steps to move your business online, you have heard the word irresistible or irresistibility. And so here's my thing, like I find that when people focus in on that word, three things happen. The first thing that happens is that you strive for the perfect message. and you end up feeling super sort of pushy, hypey, salesy, whatever you want to say, you actually become the person you do not want to become. So the second thing that happens is when that happens, you start to vibrate this energy that gets essentially dismissed, declined. Your offers get declined, your emails get deleted, you end up being discouraged. Like, it's just basically not so great. The response to what you're doing is poor. And so what happens in the third case is you internalize all that and you build up this internal resistance. And I can't tell you how many people I've worked with who will say it's kind of almost like a form of cognitive dissonance. They kind of know what they need to do, but they don't do it anyway. And it's like this internal resistance that builds up. And so this compounds.
Why do you think that happens?
The resistance.
Yeah. Not knowing really what to do, or?
Yeah, like I think it's partly not knowing what to do, feeling out of your element, feeling proud. It really depends on the person. It's a really interesting word. I mean, it's part of the subject of the book I'm writing, because I'm so interested. I hear it all the time. Like, I need to do this, but I've got this resistance.
Oh, okay.
And so that one little expression has driven my business, because my podcast is called Off My Duff, just for fun. So how to start. And the book is called 8 Digital Dragons, How to Expand Your Business by Slaying Resistance. And so it's a thing, like it's this thing that's very generationally situated with people like us, where we kind of know what we need to do. We might have some questions, but we seem to lose our ability to function in the way that we did in the offline world. So it's a thing. And so my business is built around helping people move through that and start to understand how
moving through the resistance,
moving through the resistance. Yeah, so the opposite of that is I'm like, okay, well, instead of focusing on a perfect messaging, this is what I say. I'm like, let's focus on having you be investable. When I say investable, you focus 3 things. You focus on the deeper meaning of what you do. You stand in your value as what you offer. And the third thing that happens is your business expands, and then that compounds in a positive way. So this idea of being investable versus irresistible is an important distinction in my world. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that, and Deepak Chopra would say, seduce them. He did. He says that, seduce them.
Right.
And I don't mean that in a, you know what I mean.
I thought it meant in Lenny and Squiggy from Laverne and Shirley kind of a way. I'm just kidding. No. Well, I'm showing my age, I think, by saying that. But, here's the thing. Like, I come from the startup world, and I think I bring that ethos or that rigor that you go through in the startup world, which in your community down in the Silicon Valley, the whole Bay Area, of course, people understand that when you get into the startup world and you start to build traction in a company, like there's a rigor to the process. And so
Right.
If you get yourself to the place where you're standing in front of investors, you're not interested in being irresistible, like that is not your goal at all. You're trying to be investable. You're trying to get them to trust the way that you're going to execute on your plan, so much so that they will create a transaction with you. They'll give you their hard-earned money. And so this idea of irresistibility is kind of almost like a red herring. It kind of focuses you in on the wrong thing, which is trying to be sort of catch people's attention. And I think what's happening now in the online world, if you do have a service-based business, that is having that one word is having a huge impact in people's success or lack thereof.
You mean investability?
Irresistibility.
Okay.
Yeah. So, even if you just think about that word out of context, if you just think about it in terms of, trying to get people's attention, trying to be irresistible, again, it just focuses you in on the wrong things. I can't tell you the number of people that I come across or that I work with who, they'll struggle for a year or 2 years or 3 years on defining their audience, defining their the attributes of their audience or their niche or what have you. And a lot of it has to do with just the uncertainty that arises from trying to sort of follow that word as your guiding compass.
Well, when you say irresistibility, it almost sounds like it's like a flash marketing thing. You know, you're trying to like get this blast of attention,
Right.
you know, like a lot of the, you know, bigger companies do for their products. And
Right.
I don't, you know, it might work for a little while, but it's, you know, and of course, in our part of the world, we definitely need to focus in on value.
Yeah, of
Moral
course.
value, you know, and
Yeah,
integrity and all that.
exactly. Exactly. And I think that people who get into I think that's what happens to folks who are used to being in the offline world, and they're used to um, a certain way of expressing their value or the value that they provide being received. And so when you get into parts of your business being online, it's kind of a natural to a lot of people. And they, at the beginning, maybe they go with it because they think, okay, well, this is what I need to do. This is the modus operandi. And it's not that they're trying to be a certain way, it's just they're trying to kind of, you know, they're trying to get into the game, I guess, and figure out how they occur to other people within this new realm that they don't completely understand. And so they end up, you know, sometimes feeling quite inauthentic, unnatural. Some of them want to quit. And there is a way to stand in your value. And that's kind of my message, I think, that I'd like people to know. There is a way to stand in your value,
Right.
express what you're good at, and for it to be well received.
And you know, today, I mean, we're being barraged with all kinds of things on the internet. I mean, I see more flash videos of things that I wouldn't even spend 2 minutes looking at.
Right.
You know, because it's not, to me, it's not authentic. It's just, you know, I mean, it's just being, you know, over used on some respects.
Right. Yeah, and you and I have talked about this a little bit. My background is in learning science, and so the way I like to think of the world is this great big neural network of learning, and it just keeps expanding. And I mean, that's the truth, you know, whether you think of it in terms of technology or people being connected, the speed, the pace of change, it just keeps expanding. And
Right.
so what's interesting is there's a tension happening right now with our generation who's grown up in what I call the culture of compliance that is part of big E education. I'm not talking about specific teachers or schools, but the system itself of big E education really was a manifestation of the industrial age that was constructed. Yes, it was constructed to have us reason and problem solve. And it was also constructed to have us be compliant. And so for a lot of us of this generation who have grown up through that education system, it's, you know, compliance is at the opposite end of the spectrum to innovation.
Right,
Yeah.
right. It doesn't nurture creativity.
No, and you know, like we're living in a realm of innovation, the foundation of which is this neural network that's continuing to learn. And so that tension between, you know, a generation that's grown up in this system of compliance, trying to function in a system of innovation, is we're at the root, and it's the root of a lot of the struggles that people come up against.
To shift from like in the box and think outside the box. I mean, that's
Yeah.
how I look at it, and
Yeah.
use your creative. You know, I'm still learning as far as the online thing. I've dabbled in it for years, but I still didn't have the right formula.
Well, we're getting there though, right? I think
Yeah.
that, you know, like I've seen what your plans are, and I think I'm really excited about that. There's, you've got a great community of listeners. You know, as far as, you know, having a platform, which we
Yeah.
talked about earlier on in this
Right,
chat,
right.
great platform to reach people, and people love you. So,
Oh, sweet. Thank you.
right,
You know,
people.
I am
And
excited.
messages.
I am excited about the podcast, what is happening, because every day I get new downloads. Every day it's happening. So
That's great.
I just want it to amplify. But it's great. It's happening.
Yeah, that's really awesome. I think that, like, like it's just people are listening to podcasts. It's a thing now.
Yeah.
And
Oh yeah, it's the new radio. I mean, now it's not so new anymore, but when somebody isn't exposed to it, I'll say, well, it's the new radio.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm like a big sports guy, so I will, while I'm driving, I actually listen to traditional radio in the car,
Oh, okay.
which drives most people crazy, because if you ever listen to talk sports radio,
Oh,
especially in the summer in Canada, because hockey's our thing,
right.
like they are really stretching to find interesting things to talk about. But I still listen to it faithfully if I'm driving in the car.
Are there a
And
lot of ads that come in between?
oh yeah, like it's
I
traditional
mean,
radio. Like,
somebody's got to pay for it.
yeah, totally. But then what they do is they have podcasts in addition to, which are actually supplemental to their radio. So there's a bunch of different interesting ways that different kinds of platforms are using podcasts. Some are using them as core. Some of them are using them as complementary.
Well, what kind of topics are in between?
Oh man, I'm trying to think of a hockey one, but like like a traditional show for a sports radio, talk radio might be a 3-hour segment.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's a 1-hour segment, say, and they talk about a whole bunch of things. And I'm trying to think of a podcast, because I don't really listen to sports podcasts, but I know they have them. So say that I've got a 3-hour morning talk radio show on ESPN radio, chances are I also have a podcast, and that goes on to the so the 3-hour stream in the morning would live stream onto the digital radio station online. Podcast would be pushed out onto the platforms, the podcasting platforms, and it would be different. But it might be the same personality. So, what that does is it kind of speaks to the fact that everybody's consuming their media in different ways. And so, you just got to get dialed into your audience and find out how they're consuming content. So,
right. And that to me is the most challenging, is to really hone into the audience and knowing what the audience is without having some form of gauge. How do you figure that out?
Well, I mean, there's different ways for sure. Analytics are getting so good.
Yeah, that's true.
That you can start to see things in video, for example. It's not difficult to see who is consuming your videos, and then to pixel them so they're getting served ads on whatever their social platform might be that you're retargeting. So there's a whole new world of metrics underneath all that content that's being pushed out. And again, that just kind of goes back to the challenge that us folks have. Like, say it's our second act business,
right?
Or second act. How do we participate in that in a way that supports what our goal is? So that's usually either a side hustle or a second income in the family. Sometimes it's the core income. How do you do that? And how do you do that in such a way that it supports what you're talking about in your show, which is building wealth for you, your family, and for your community?
Well, building wealth in the unconscious, subconscious level.
That too. Yeah. Well, having a wealthy, absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's part of the continuum of, and actually the word consciousness is very interesting, because I think that the community of conscious-minded people, they are part of the they are part of the surge into this digital realm that, are trying to reach people with their message.
Right. Especially when it's not necessarily like in our society now with mainstream being controlled.
Right.
Basically it's being controlled, and it isn't always the truth. Most of the time, well, I shouldn't say that. I don't want to blanket, but a lot of the time it's not true. It's
Right.
not the truth. So there's got to be some form of venue to be able to tell the truth or try to raise the consciousness on the general population. And to me, this is how you do it.
Yeah. That's a really interesting topic you bring up. I hadn't actually thought of it before you just raised it, but for the conscious-minded folks who are attempting to do that, whether it's just like a philanthropic movement, or like a business, or even just a project,
Right.
community-based
Education, just to
totally.
educate and to learn. Yeah.
So we're in this time when you guys are coming up against another election. There's going to be tons of scrutiny around that election, and the communication practices all the way around. And so for the conscious-minded person, it's interesting to think about how we can occur within this evolving paradigm of media that surrounds us everywhere. Everybody's got access to it. And it's just a super interesting topic. If I was going back to school, I'd maybe go and study it.
Yeah, oh, for sure. I mean, but I noticed being in this environment, I mean, they're making it more difficult. And I'm saying they as the mainstream media, which is, kind of influenced by the powers in the financial powers and the political powers. And they're trying to squelch this out a little bit because, we focus in on the subjects that really need to be talked about so we can have some social change. And, I just hope that we don't lose this. I'm saying the TV station, and it's so important to keep this alive.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for joining me.
Oh, thank you for having me. Thank you for having me. I mean, in Canada, we have always watched PBS. CBC is kind of a crown corporation, which means that it's partially financed by our tax money. So, I mean, I think the media experience up here is very interesting because we even get some feeds from the UK. So it's a very different experience that we have up here than I think you have down there.
Do you think it's more free? It's not so controlled, or do you think they control it up there? As far as the content that's being aired?
Yeah. It's a tough question. I mean, the culture of media, the culture of politics, the culture of all that is just, it's actually one of the markers of differentiation. Sometimes people will compare Canada and the States quite a bit.
Yeah.
That is definitely one of the markers of differentiation.
Yeah.
And it's a complicated question you ask. I mean, like, the thing is, I think that the way I think about it is this: if something's going to happen, let's say that there was an incident in Victoria, British Columbia, Canada, that was newsworthy. Well, I know that there's 3 major networks up here, and there's also local networks and local radio and what have you.
Right.
Each one of those individual reporters is going to come and report on that incident. And they may all have their own takes on it.
Right.
But, people are going to understand that, whatever happened, happened. And so for any one of them to be called out for reporting it in a way that was fake would probably result in them not having a job anymore. So it's just very interesting how people's relationship to that word down there is that's just comes top of mind, is so different than it is up here. I think that if someone were to call a reporter fake up here, it wouldn't land. Whereas we watch the media down there, and it just seems to be a word that it's kind of the word of the year. It's.
You mean the fake news? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, it just seems like you can use it to dismiss outright whatever you don't agree with, or you can use it as something to dismiss what you don't want it as a redirect away from stuff that you want people to focus people away from. So
yeah. So it's more manipulated down here.
Yeah, but like I spend a lot of time down there too, so I think that's just going to be an interesting. I mean, it's an interesting thing that you guys just have to wrestle with as you go through this next election. And I mean, in the context of what we're talking about, if you're a conscious individual, what do you do? Like, what do you need to do? And I definitely notice with people like in your neck of the woods that I know that are in the transformation industry,
right.
It's like a question right now, like, what are we supposed to be doing? How do we occur in this environment where these kinds of words are kind of overtaking the way that we used to think of the world? It's very complicated.
I don't see, well, I'm trying to be open-minded on seeing what you're saying, to try to define what you're saying. It just seems like you have more freer of speech up there, maybe. I mean, maybe I'm coining it wrong, but, right now things are kind of tense here.
Right. Oh, I'm not dismissing that at all. Like, I feel it when you cross the border.
Wow. Yeah.
Like we have, Toronto has a bit of a gang violence issue going on right now.
Oh, no.
Which is causing some gun violence. So you guys tend to think of us not having it in Toronto, but that's Toronto only.
Right.
So in response to that, our federal election platforms are going to be, even here, tightening gun control laws.
Yeah.
Whereas down there, I don't think we even have to get into it. I mean, there's the constant polarization of views around guns. But my point about the word fake is it's become such a divisive term that where up here it just wouldn't play. So I would say that, are we freer in speech? I don't know if that's the right way of expressing it. I think I feel like people are more discerning sometimes around, what they think is truth.
Oh, okay.
But that's just my opinion.
Is that like within the media world, or like within the circle of people that you have around you?
I just think in general.
In general, okay.
Yeah, I mean, there was a reason why there was someone who attempted to do a Fox News style channel, and it lasted a very short time.
No surprise.
Well, it did surprise a lot of people, but
really?
Canadians did not respond to it. They were just like, for the pure economics of it, it just went away.
Oh, yeah.
That doesn't mean we don't have both left, centrist, and right-wing media, because we do.
Right.
Like you guys do.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So what words of wisdom do you have for people that really want to do a podcast or online, teaching or whatever on that level?
Well, I think the thing is, I was going to say it's not a gold rush, but I think people have moved past that. I don't think they think of it as a potential gold rush. I think the reality is, if you're a service-based entrepreneur, whether it's full or part-time, you need to sort of pick a lane and get good at it, and just get good at it. Like when I teach people, if people are in my programs and stuff, I try to, I don't know, like I kind of give them permission to think again. It feels like sometimes they get kind of blinders on
Oh,
because,
yeah.
like for example, there's a term in old school marketing like target market.
Yeah.
And then, maybe niche or things like that. And so more current terms are like avatar or customer persona, these kinds of things. Well, those concepts are constantly evolving. The way that you figure out who your customer personas are very much these days is related to things like metrics and how people respond to your content. So what I try to do to people is I say, okay, look, people are going to respond to you in because of a bunch of different things. So don't think of it as just one way. So if you're not super clear on your niche, it doesn't mean you should spend 2 years trying to figure it out. You should get started and your audience will find you. I teach like 5 different ways. Usually like people are attracted to you for any combination of the 5. And then they start to follow you. And then when that happens, you just, you put in the work. You provide them with services if you're more of a consultant, or you do some coaching if that's your thing. There's a bunch of different ways you can approach it. Well, anyway, so I mean,
Yeah.
we were talking about the kinds of things that you need to do to kind of set yourself up for some kind of success if you're moving your business online. And I think the thing that I try to impart upon people is that, hey, it's okay. Like, let's look at the different ways that people are going to respond to you and come up with like a sort of a core strategy for your specific point of view. And then let's pick a platform for you to access and to, come up with a plan for having success on that platform, right? So, it's going to depend on every person, but that's not a bad strategy, just to sort of create like a hyper focus around that.
Yep. Yep. Well, that's good, and I'm doing that myself. So where do you see yourself going with all this? I mean, I know you're having a retreat next month. Or did you decide to do that or not do that, or?
I'm not sure if we're gonna do that retreat. Like I put it out there as an idea, so that's what you're talking about.
Right, right.
But I would like to do that. So my family, we have a place on a little island outside of Victoria called Piers Island, and it's kind of cool. It's got an interesting history to it. And it's only got about 150 homes around the
Perimeter,
outside.
yeah.
Yeah, and so I would like to one time bring a bunch of my mastermind clients there, and so it's kind of idea I put out online. I think that's probably what you're referencing, and you saw.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. It's right on the water, so it's a fun place. I think that's something that'll happen pretty soon, but I don't think it'll happen this month.
Yeah, well, it sounds like it could be innovative.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thinking outside the box.
You got to think outside the box. Exactly. Well, yeah, I mean, the thing is I think people, so many people have been to Vancouver now. It's in a different country for a lot of you folks down there, but it's pretty quick to get up from San Francisco Bay Area.
Right.
And Victoria is just, right across the water from Vancouver. So a lot of people are coming over here. And so
I love Vancouver. Vancouver's beautiful too.
It is. Yeah, I love Vancouver.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I spend half of my time there as well as here.
Yeah. The one place that I just absolutely was awestruck on how absolutely beautiful is, we went a little bit farther than Whistler Mountain. And oh my God, it's breathtaking. The beauty of the mountains and the water and the it's just absolutely beautiful.
I believe that's called Pemberton.
Ah, okay.
I believe that's called Pemberton. And yeah, Pemberton is gorgeous, So I think you probably see, like when I do business in Vancouver, quite often I'll jump on we call them puddle jumpers,
Right.
a seaplane.
Yeah, yeah.
But you can actually there's a seaplane that's outfitted with skis. It'll fly you on top of the glacier up in Whistler.
Oh, yeah, and then you can ski down. I've never done that,
Yeah,
but I know people that have.
yeah, exactly. But yeah, no, I like living on the West Coast. Vancouver is the city where in the middle of the winter you can be skiing and sailing on the same day.
Yeah. Yep. 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 Yep.
Yeah.
Well,
So
go ahead. Sorry.
well, I was just going to say, like, we were talking about your podcast and about podcasting in general. And so, I'm excited as your podcast grows and what have you. And yeah, I mean, I think if listeners should dial into your podcast, because I think it gives you a really a great opportunity, like a new opportunity to build like a really great audience. And I think, like, if you think about traditional media versus new media, new media actually is really neat because it gives us a stronger level of access. It's like, a lot of the content that you had sort of in a closet, in a essence, is now searchable, kind of like in a library.
Right, right.
And I think that's a fantastic thing because you've got so much great content that you're continuing to put out.
Yes, I've turned all my shows into podcasts.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of content. Oh my goodness.
Right.
Lots. So it's just learning how to get it out there. And I'm getting there.
That's good. Yeah. No, I'm excited to see it. So.
Well, is there any other, with all your media, online, startup experience, is there any other, before we close, is there any other like words of wisdom that you can share?
Sure. Like I think that it's important to if you're like I go back to what I said earlier. Like I think understanding how to stand in your value as someone who's having a part of your business online, you're stepping into something that you shouldn't feel shy about saying. Like you just need some help. And like I think we're moving into a realm now where anything that is viewed as trickery or inauthentic is going to have a harder time. And we're going to start to witness the rise of more authenticity and people who, put out an authentic message.
Yay!
Their audience. So I think we're turning the corner, and I think part of that is just people's resolve to influence. Like I hope a manifestation of all the divisiveness that we're experiencing is that people like your audience start to rise up and resolve to make a difference. And
Amen.
so I think that if that's where your head is at and you're feeling a little bit discouraged about maybe some of the stuff that you're seeing out there, just know that it feels like we're starting to turn a corner, and that if you do stand in your value and just understand what you want to accomplish in the world, you can do so.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Well, it's been great having you on here, and next time we'll have you live sitting across the table.
I would love that, and next time I'll even bring the right amount of power to my computer.
Oh, hey, no, it's all good. It's all good. It all works out. So, and I'll be back in touch with you, when this will air and be out there in the media world. And
Sounds good.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it and appreciate your sharing.
Thanks, Dr. Cheryl.
Yeah, and thanks to Marin TV and the facility here, and thanks to my crew. We have Gabi, and we have Brad, and we have Eric. And thanks to all the staff for all what they do to make this happen. And if you like our show, hashtag Marin TV and let us know what you think. And